When I tell you, it was so saddening to me to hear that language used because it isn't an accurate representation of what it actually means. Defund the police is an oversimplification of what was actually a fairly simple concept. When explained, what was being asked for in that context was, can we reallocate funds? Meaning, can we take the lump sum of money? Let's say that we give $1 million to the police, and instead of spending $250,000 on overtime because so many officers are working 60, 80-hour weeks, just utterly exhausted, but they're responding to half the crimes they're responding to aren't even crimes. They're cats stuck in trees or a family member who's unwell and needs taken to a psychiatric situation for an evaluation, or an unruly kid, or, they're responding to this huge set of community issues that are really not suited or even the best use of a police officer's time, and can create situations where they can escalate. And also our officers are tired because they're working this many hours, and tired is not a good place to be if you're going to hold a weapon, and defunding meant, let's move some funds from this overtime situation of responding to things and get these officers less hours. And let's take these funds and apply them in creating a trained, semi-volunteer workforce, that is available to respond to these issues and is qualified to do so. So let's create a group of mental health professionals. And instead, when those calls come in, instead of routing them to expensive overtime houred police officers who aren't even fairly equipped to handle, an unruly teen, let's route that to an overtime or an extra dedicated hired mental health professional who's able to go and respond to that, and then tap a professional, officer if indeed it is required. And so you hear this term defund, and what they meant was, let's defund things within the policing system that aren't able to be used properly and don't serve anyone. They don't serve the neighborhood. They don't serve the officers. They don't serve the officers' families. They don't serve the community. They don't serve the systemic behaviors that have always been. Let's start rerouting it as we have evolved as a society into building out the infrastructure that helps our society. Mental health issues have always been around since the beginning of time. We're just finally getting the tools and understanding on how to address them. And what's unfortunate is we're not changing our systems to be able to address them accordingly. So since the beginning of time, we've had police officers, and mental health, if it came up as an issue, we just threw people in jail. Well, we're still doing that, even though we have a better understanding around mental health, even though we have a better understanding around where these people need to go and how we can help support them and tools that can be provided, but we're not implementing it. So when you heard all this language around defund the police, it's nerve-wracking. I mean, no one wants to hear that. If there is a situation much like these school shootings, we need police officers. We need someone who can come in and do something. However, if there's a situation where your teen is getting out of sorts, and as a parent, you're concerned about their safety, their well-being, or the well-being of others, an officer may not be the right person to call in around a kid's tantrum. We need an alternative that is qualified to be able to go do that. And how much would we love to send our officers home early at the end of a 40-hour work week instead of giving them overtime to show up with an unruly teen? I'd much rather, if it was my baby, have a professional come in and see funds allocated for that. That's what that meant. But man, oh man, you better believe that that was not what people's takeaway was. And then we get into these arguments around the belief of what we think the term is or what the concept is, rather than actually discussing how to move forward. And that's how we stay the same.